operations. I probably should. That'd be a really good idea.
What's the project that's on your bench right now?
Well, I think I just got a new battery here. A friend of mine picked up a batteries for several of the club members. They're from a data center that got rid of their UPS batteries. After they're 10-year batteries, but after 5 years they had to get rid of them, and they're really cheap. And so I'm configuring that in a box with probably we'll hook that to my solar power charger here and such. So that's the primary thing that I've been tinkering with here over the past week or so.
You mentioned earlier that you're operating a hex beam. I'm in the market for a hex beam. What do you like about the hex beam, and do you find it to be like a quieter antenna than the G5RV?
Oh yeah, and it's not really a tight beam on the in the forward direction, but it seems to have a really good front to back ratio. So it really cuts out a lot of noise from behind you, and it does make a difference. I have a really small lot here, so there's not much space here. There's no way I could get a TH11 like we have at the club station in my backyard here. There are too many trees around and such. So the hex beam fits in that. It was easy assembly. And it just works. I've got it on a push-up pole, and I have it guide, and it's I've been really impressed with it. I just added a better rotator. I was using just a TV antenna rotator for a long time, and finally added a high gain rotator to it here. But it really makes a difference when I point it toward Europe in a DX contest. I do have to swing it around in domestic contests, so it's got some gain, and it's all bands 6 meters up through 20 meters, including 17 and 12. So it's got good coverage across the HF spectrum.
So you didn't buy the 40-meter kit?
I didn't. I was afraid I wouldn't have room for it. I think it would probably bump into some trees or into the house or something here. It's awfully close and an awfully small lot.
It sounds to me like your wife seems to be pretty understanding about your amateur radio hobby now. What kind of impact has amateur radio had on your family life?
She's been very supportive. I mean, she puts up with all these dipoles I have strung in the trees, and I have a window line running to them, so it's not very attractive. And then the hex beam has taken up a good part of the backyard, and she just puts up with it, and she knows I enjoy it. She's been supportive of that and any equipment purchases. She's also, I think, kind of enjoys the portable operations that I do from time to time. We like to go to a cabin here in one of the local state parks from time to time, just for the weekend. And I'll usually try to pick a weekend when there's a contest of some sort. And so I've worked, North American QSO parties and some of the other contests from a cabin. And again, I take my G5RV, or that's typically what I've used, and string it in a tree behind the cabin. And I have my Go Box here, which has an IC7300 in it, which is great. It's a great radio for that type of thing. And she does her puzzles. She likes to build puzzles, and I get on the air and make some contacts, and so she's very supportive of that.
You mentioned that you have a Go Box. A Go Box is not something that you take on soda. It's something that you kind of have to lift with two hands. What's in the Go Box besides the IC7300?
Let's see, it has a tuner. I have the LDG AT200 Pro 2 tuner, and I also put in a Samlex power supply. If I'm operating picnic table portable, it's usually with a battery of some sort, but I do have the power supply when we're operating from the cabin. And then there's also a wind keyer that I use for keying any CW contest. I don't touch the paddle very often. It's like I say, I do mostly search and pounce contesting, so I can just push buttons and do the full contact and exchange. But there's a little speaker in there as well too, to kind of get the speaker firing forward instead of up into the box. But it's one of these. Maybe it's a 6U container that usually they have sound systems in for bands and things like that. It does take both hands. It's not a backpack thing, but it's not too bad.
What excites you the most about what's happening in amateur radio now?
I think it's the technology, that melding of digital technology with the old analog. I think the software-defined radios are just amazing in their capabilities, and just this idea of cat control of the radio. You couldn't do that back when I first started hamming. There were no computers to do that sort of thing. And then, of course, the digital modes too. That's really, I think, kept the hobby, kept the bands alive during solar minimum here. So that's been pretty cool to see that. I think that those FT8 came along at just the right time. I was doing JT65 HF before that, but that's a lot slower mode, but it worked, and I really enjoyed that. I think the quality of even the low-end radios, the stability, the receiver performance, just the purity of the transmitters, you really don't have to worry about out-of-band transmissions or anything. They just all work very well. And I think as I mentioned before, the online resources are just amazing. That's a form of virtual Elmering, kind of. You can get connected with a group for just about any type of radio or any operating mode or any type of antenna. There's a hex beam group out there, if you're interested in that. And, people talk about the problems they've had, or, how they've solved them, or those kind of things. And that is a form of Elmering, I think, that is very important.
So you mentioned cat control. Does that mean that you're operating your main station by remote control?
I have done it from like another room. I haven't done it from outside the house here. But yeah, I set up at one point. I had a Raspberry Pi set up and kind of in the game room. I'd be watching TV and doing FT8 contacts. So that's about as far as I've gone with that. Not nearly as advanced as a lot of the guys who do the remote operations.
What advice would you give to new or returning hams to the hobby?
I think get on the air. I see that with some new hams in our club who are maybe nervous about getting on the air, sort of reluctant, and that's why we reach out to them and try to we can't be with them physically now, but we can be on 2 meters while they're making their HF contact or that kind of thing. But I think it's really important to do that. And I know there are a lot of folks that just like to build, the makers out there. That's all great. But I think, just putting a radio in the air and making some contacts it makes you want to do it more. You may be a little nervous when you first do it, but it makes you want to do it more. So I think that's important. And I think along those lines, too, is just try contesting. I've given talks to our club a couple of times about wading into the contest ocean. You don't have to jump right in head first. You can kind of wade in and make a few contacts during the contest. There's just a lot of people on the air. It's a target-rich environment, as they say. We found, too, that using Zoom or Discord during some contest or some of our special event ops, it allows us to chat with folks and, in the club as they're making the contacts, and that sort of helps.